Okay, so this is my final project on Helen Keller, more specifically the middle school in Easton, and it's by AJ Geltman and me. So let's start off talking about where this middle school is, where the site is. It's at 360 Sport Hill Road in Easton, Connecticut, shown in the Google Maps on the top, and the welcome sign in the photograph to the right, which leads to a long driveway where on the right side is the middle school and the left side is the Easton Community Center, or the ECC. Helen Keller herself lived in her house for a portion of her life from 1936 until her death, and that was at 163 Reading Road, shown in the Google Maps under the photograph, in the bottom right. So who is Helen Keller? Well, Helen Adams Keller was born in Tuscumbia, Alabama on June 27th, 1880. She got sick when she was about 19 months old, and it was so bad that she went deaf and blind. Helen's quick loss of sight and hearing made it very hard for her to communicate and understand what was going on around her. But Helen's life changed when she met Anne Sullivan, who became her teacher and friend for the rest of her life. Anne Sullivan, who was blind herself, became Helen's guide and teacher. Anne taught Helen how to talk about using touch and the manual alphabet. This opened up a world of options for Helen. Helen's intelligence and determination grew thanks to Anne's patient direction. She soaked up information like a sponge, learning to read, write, and even speak several languages. She had a never-ending desire to learn, which would shape the rest of her amazing life. Helen Keller went to the Perkins School for the Blind and then to the elite Radcliffe College, where she became the first person who was both deaf and blind to get a Bachelor of Arts degree. Helen Keller's real effect came from her tireless advocacy work, not from what she did in school. She worked hard to make the lives of people with disabilities better and to fight for their rights. Helen broke down barriers and brought attention to the skills and potential of what people who are having problems like hers. Helen Keller moved a lot, and her speeches, lectures, and writings captivated people all over the world. Her words gave people hope and urged society to accept everyone and give everyone the same chances. Her book, The Story of My Life, is still a famous piece of writing because it tells the story of how she went from a world of silence and darkness to one of knowledge and light. The book touched the hearts of millions of people and gave them hope that they could go through hard times and become great. Helen Keller's influence lasted long after she died. She left a lasting mark on society by fighting for the rights of people with disabilities, women's right to vote, and social equality. Her unwavering courage and drive continue to inspire a lot of people to this day. And on the slide here, you can see I put that she lived in her house in Easton, on 163 Reading Road from 1936 until she passed away. And it is a historic destination to this day. And the middle school was built on June 14th, 1965, and that is also still in use to this day. Okay. Before she moved to Easton, Helen Keller traveled a lot, giving talks and writings that inspired people. She wrote a lot of books, including her autobiography, The Story of My Life, which was a big hit all over the world. Helen Keller's life changed, and her spirit never gave up. This continues to inspire and move people from all walks of life. She is a sign of courage, strength, and the power of sticking with somebody, is the power of sticking with something even when it seems impossible. And that's the cover of the book she wrote, her autobiography, The Story of My Life. Moving on to her life in Easton, Helen Keller moved to Easton in 1936, and she kept fighting for the rights of people with disabilities even after she moved there. She became very active in the community and used her presence and strong voice to bring attention to issues and inspire people to make changes. Helen Keller found the peace and quiet she was looking for in Easton. This gave her time to think, write, and help causes that were important to her. She wrote a lot, releasing many articles and books that not only told about her own life, but also urged people to take action to change society. During her time in Easton, Helen Keller kept going on trips, giving talks that left people in awe of her eloquence and passion. Her words made a big impact, changing how people thought about people with disabilities and fighting for their rights to be included in all parts of life. Helen Keller's influence was felt far and wide, not just in Easton. Laws, policies, and views toward people with disabilities have changed for the better because of her work. She did everything she could to help people in similar situations to get an education, professional training, and jobs. Helen Keller had a big impact on society, and for that, she got a lot of praise and awards. For her great work, she was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is one of the greatest civilian awards in the United States. People from all over the world admired and honored her because she never gave up and always did what she said she would do. Helen Keller stayed busy and involved until the end of her life. She continued to inspire others through her writing, speaking, and advocacy work. Her legacy as an activist, writer, and symbol of hope continues to encourage people to accept empathy, compassion, and the idea that the human spirit has no limits. For the site's broader historical context, in the late 19th and early 20th century, Helen Keller, who was born in 1880, this time marked rapid industrialization, technological advancements, and urbanization. This was also the period that witnessed social and political movements advocating for women's rights, workers' rights, and education reform. Then there was the Progressive Era during the 1890s to 1920s in the United States sought to address social issues and improve living conditions. Progressive reformers focused on issues such as child labor, poverty, healthcare, and education. Helen Keller emerged as a prominent figure during this era advocating for disability rights and education. The World Wars. Helen Keller lived through both World War I and World War II. These global conflicts shaped the geopolitical landscape, causing immense human suffering and leading to profound societal changes. Then the women's suffrage movement. Helen Keller actively supported the women's suffrage movement, which fought for women's right to vote. This movement gained significant momentum during Keller's lifetime and culminated in the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920, granting women the right to vote. Civil rights movement. While Keller's prime advocacy focused on disability rights, her life overlapped with the early stages of the civil rights movement in the United States. This movement sought to combat racial segregation, discrimination, and promote equal rights for the African Americans. The rise of socialism and labor movements. Keller's activism also coincided with the rise of socialist ideologies and labor movements that sought to improve working conditions, ensure fair wages, and address social inequalities resulting from rapid industrialization. Technological advances. Throughout Helen Keller's lifetime, there were notable advances in communication technologies. These developments played a crucial role in shaping Keller's education, such as her learning to communicate through the manual alphabet and her ability to communicate with the wider world through her writings and public speeches. For Helen Keller's relation to the America's Promise, she was a huge advocate for equal rights, for the disabled, for women's right to vote, and for workers' rights. Her own life as a whole also reflects the pursuit of happiness. Just the fact that she had to prevail from her difficult background, meaning her deaf and blindness. Eric Foner writes that machinery was booming during the time Keller was alive, meaning the technology advancements, like I mentioned earlier. Things like typewriters made communication a lot easier for Helen Keller. And America's Promise is summarized to the right. We believe that all people are equal and that their creator gave them certain rights that can't be taken away. These rights include the right of liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To protect these rights, governments are set up among people and get their rightful power from the consent of the government. Why am I interested? Helen Keller's impact on my hometown was surprising. I never really thought how significant she was towards Easton. To be honest, all I knew was the middle school because I actually went to the middle school, but I never knew that she actually lived in my town. But after realizing that she was a huge impact on not just Easton, but America as a whole, I became very invested in this project and actually had quite a good time doing it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.